Hey everyone, my name's Joe Rydzewski. I'm from Norwood, Mass. During this story today, I'll be drinking a Castle Island Keeper IPA. One of my favorites and a go-to for me. And Castle Island Brewery, they're actually out of Norwood, so if you ever come across this beer, I highly recommend it. And this story today, it's actually about my first time saltwater fishing, which was only about 3.5 or 4 weeks ago now. So me and my roommates, who I live with now and who I lived with in college, we had gone down to Long Island to go visit our friend from college, Johnny. And I will say, I'll plug it right now, that please give him a follow on social at Uncle Larry Outdoors. He does some really great stuff there, so please give him the follow if you can. And we had gone down to Long Island to visit Johnny, and throughout college and everything, Johnny exposed me to fishing like way more than I previously had been. I would fish here and there growing up and in high school and stuff, but I really had no idea what I was doing. So when I got to college, Johnny was always the one to teach me anything about fishing or show me what baits to use or show me how to catch certain fish. And he was always the one heading up little day trips that we would do. So I really owe a lot to Johnny on that front. And while we were catching up, I just mentioned that I had never been saltwater fishing. And so in his eyes, I was almost immediate, like, all right, well, we're going tomorrow. And he had said that, you could probably walk, if we park it up, you got about 1.5 mile walk to this inlet on Shinnecock Bay. And he said it's just a hot spot for bluefish and for stripers. He said, it would be a great spot to go to. So that next morning, we ended up going down there, making that 1.5 mile walk to this inlet. And it was a beautiful day. And probably had about 250 yards of rocks to pretty much traverse and fish off of. And we get started, and there were probably a good 7 or 8 boats out there as well. And it seemed like they were pulling up a fish every 5 to 10 minutes, someone was. So Johnny was just like, all right, well, today's gonna be your day. And probably on my second cast, I get a pretty solid hit, and I was just way too excited, reeling way too hard and way too fast, and almost lost the thing like immediately. So I had my lesson learned on that one. We continued to fish this, just walking back and forth for a good hour and a half or so. And we get back to kind of where we started, kind of near that where I had that first hit. And there was this tower right on like the edge of the inlet on the ocean side. And Johnny just had mentioned that he always wanted to go climb that thing. I was like, yeah, great, go do that. Before, like, let's switch baits. That first hit that I had, I was using an X-Wrap. I ended up switching to a diamond jig, and just out of confidence with the first bait, I was like, all right, let's switch back to that X-Wrap. So we switch baits. He goes up to that tower, and probably after like 5 minutes of him being up there, he turns back, and I just got a huge hit. And because I had that lesson learned on that first one, I let it run a bit, working it for a couple minutes, and it felt like probably 5 to 10 minutes of actually reeling it in, when in reality it was probably like 2 to 3 minutes of working it. But I finally get this thing down. Johnny basically jumps off the tower to come help me. He gets down to the rocks, helps me pull it up. It's this beautiful bluefish. We finally get it up, and because I'm using that X-Wrap, one end is hooked in the fish, and we don't even know how it happened, but the other end then hooks Johnny, and this thing would just not stop flopping. So it hooks his hand. I pretty much just have to pin the fish down, because the more it flopped, the worse this thing was getting in Johnny's finger. And we kind of finally have, after pinning it down, we kind of have a second to actually assess this. And this thing was pretty deep in Johnny's finger. The barb was deep in there. And we were like, all right, well, what do we do from here? And Johnny just says to me, he's like, sorry to do this to you. And I will preface this with, this fish did not go to waste. We ended up using it as bait later on in the week. But Johnny's like, I'm sorry, dude, like, you got to kill this one. He's like, I'll pin it down. You go get a rock. Like, you have to kill, like, or my fingers, we don't know what's going to happen. So Johnny pins it down. I come back, hit the thing over the head once, have to do it again. And finally, this thing's done flopping, and we're able to unhook it and finally take an assessment at Johnny's finger. And this hook was just so deep. The more it flopped, the deeper it got, and by the time that I had killed it, it was pretty deep. So we tried to work on it for like maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and we just came to the realization like, hey, we should probably go see someone who can actually take care of this properly instead of just trying to yank the thing out. And we kind of pack up our things. We looked pretty ridiculous in the moment. I had this 15 to 17 pound bluefish, and Johnny's got this huge hook in his finger, and we have to make the 1.5 mile walk back to our car. And we get to the kind of EMT station that was at the beach, and this girl was just like, I have no idea what to do with this. Like, you got to go see a doctor. And by now, the adrenaline of what happened is kind of wearing off, and Johnny's finger's really starting to hurt. And we have about a 40-minute drive to the hospital.
Little Uncle Larry's update for Snapchat. Got Big Joe Rydzewski on his first ever big bluefish today on the rocks. And in the process of landing it,
Let's get to the hospital.
To the hospital!
As we figured, the doctor knew what to do. Poked the hook through the finger, was able to cut it, and then pull the rest out. So, end of the day, Johnny's finger was fine. Wasn't, bandaged it up. Good from there, and we got this beautiful bluefish. And it was just such a great experience for my first time saltwater fishing. Going out with Johnny for my first time saltwater fishing, really did not expect anything less. Not only do we have the ridiculous side of him getting his finger caught, but it was just a great learning experience. And he's always one to say, and I'm a preacher of it, that you can read as much as you want and you can watch as many videos as you want, but really to get the experience and to learn is you got to go out there and do it. And coming away from that day, I have this tremendous experience, and I also got to learn a few things along the way. So that's exactly how almost every fishing trip with Johnny has always been. I'm always going to go out there and have fun, and then I'm also going to learn a few tidbits along the way. And it was just overall such a great experience. Glad his finger was okay at the end. We had this beautiful fish, and it was really just that first saltwater fishing trip that I really will never forget. Cheers.